Here.
Councilmember Sampson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Olson.
Here.
And Mayor Marshall.
Here.
And for the records, Councilmember Hernandez is absent.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take it away, Bryce.
All right. Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Thank you again for joining me on this morning to discuss our vehicle situation in Avalon. Today we will be evaluating most of the things that I spoke to you guys about at the last session. I will forewarn you that it will not be nearly as flashy as it was last time, mostly because I'm not talking about new ideas. I'm just going into greater detail. So I do apologize for that, but I'll still make some jokes along the way.
Will we be able to have more interaction on this one? Because
one of the
because I need to bring some ideas forward that we need some changes that possibly changes. I need to introduce those.
So in terms of format, this one's going to be completely different from the last one. With the last one, I had a lot of ideas that needed to go the full extent before they could be understood. With this one, feel free to interrupt me at any time because there's going to be, I'm sure, questions on the stuff that I'm going to be delivering.
Great.
Before we get into it, the heroes of today's session, I'm the one talking to you guys, but the two people that really made this all happen is Denise Ratty, who's been badgering me to make sure that I get this done, and then Jordan Monroe, who has been staying up with me some late nights to make sure this all happens. So thank you to them. So I am going to do a recap from the first session. Again, we talked about values, problems, and solutions. When we approach a solution, we need to make sure that it aligns with the values. So in doing that, what we talked about from the last session is coming up with some creative solutions as opposed to putting things in boxes. And we might accomplish more that way. Okay, so the ride-alongs with the Sheriff's Department are continuing. Those are going quite well. Code Enforcement has an appointment next week to meet with a new station commander to make sure that the new regime down there continues to enforce our municipal code. The boots are coming along as well. We only had one boot to start with, so we have ordered several more of them. Code Enforcement has sent out 10-day notices for people that are driving illegal vehicles, different than the vehicle roundup. These ones are ones that people haven't registered and haven't gotten permits for, that they're still driving them around. So Code has identified those vehicles. They've sent out 10-day notices that they need to get this fixed or they're going to get a boot put on their vehicle. Once the boot is put on there, then it'll end up getting towed. We are looking into options for a place that we can use as a temporary holding facility for those vehicles before we get them off of the island. Vehicle roundup, once we get the boot situation taken care of and finish identifying all the abandoned vehicles, we have a pretty good list right now, but there's still a couple more that are floating around out there. We will get that handled. We do want to notify the public so that if anybody has any vehicles that they would like to voluntarily relinquish, we can add those in. I hope everybody walked this morning on their way up here. I know I did. We are reaching out to the school to work on the walking school bus program. I spoke with Dan Hunke, and he is very excited about the idea. I'm hoping that we can get something implemented with that by the 2017-2018 school year, so that we can get the kids walking to school. I was walking to work the other day, which happens to be on the same route as the school, and got all excited because I got behind a little kid and his mom that were walking to school, and they were just talking and having a great time, and then 14 golf carts buzzed by me, and I got depressed again. Okay, does anybody have any questions on that?
The boot fee, how do we decide on that one?
It's something that's going to have to be updated in our fee schedule. So my guess would be that it's something that's going to have to come to...
Not for the boot, but I was speaking to Charlene at BB&K, and we could have that part of that administrative citation ticket that we have. We just have to establish what that's going to be.
Oh, okay. I thought we had a fee in last year's budget in the fee schedule.
For the boot removal?
For the boot.
I don't remember that, Cindy.
Okay.
I'll
No,
check on that. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
I think because we haven't used it, I don't remember that.
Okay.
Oh, and let me back up on the ticket book. Where is that along the lines? The new ticket books where's that?
Administrative citation books.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Are they here?
No,
Okay.
but the
On their way.
George. Yes.
Oh, okay.
On the way.
Thanks,
Coming
Jordan.
to a city near you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So, parking meters. The majority of what I'm going to talk to you about today is about getting more in-depth with parking meters. Out of everything that I spoke to you about, it is the one that has the greatest expense and the greatest impact. So I want to make sure that you guys have a full understanding, and that way you guys can make a very clear decision on if it's something you guys want to move forward on. So as I talked about last time, there's several options in terms of getting parking meters. You can get these things done any possible way that you want, from those old coin ones that you can buy on eBay at this point for a buck a piece that probably are irrelevant to some of the nicer ones. So I looked at the new technology from everybody that I've spoken to in all of our discussions. If we're going to go down the route of parking meters, it would probably behoove us to go with some of the newer technology because it's proving to be much more effective. So I reached out for a couple of quotes. The only one that I was actually able to get a quote back from is McKay Meters. They have the MK Beacon parking meter, which is a solar-based parking meter. It takes coin, credit card. And one of the really nice things about it is we can get it just kind of all by itself, or it has a tremendous amount of options that we can add on to it that I think would be useful and functional in town. So this is the quote for the meters themselves. Runs just under $33,000. This is 20 double space meters, so the cost of it is just over $800 per parking space. This does not include shipping, so I figure you're going to add on probably another $1,000, $1,500 for shipping. So that is just for the meters themselves. Now, when I came to you guys last time, I talked about some of the other goodies that these things come along with. The solar technology is sort of the direction in which everything's headed with parking meters in general. It also goes along with all of our green initiatives in town. Mm-hmm. So we had them get us a quote on parking sensors. One of the things that I was really adamant about was the code enforcement piece of parking meters, just because if we can make it so that Miguel and Christian aren't walking down the street having to chalk tires for most of their day, it'll save them a bunch of time, it'll save us a bunch of money, and in the end it'll make us more efficient as a department. So there are actually parking sensors that you put into the spaces themselves that go into the ground, and what they do is they can detect whether there's a vehicle sitting on top of them. So if somebody is parked at a parking meter and they have not paid for their meter, it will show up in an application that code enforcement would have, and it would show up as a red, and then they would go and give it a ticket. So the parking sensors themselves, the rough estimate on quotes that we got for them is about $400 each. So that brings our grand total to about $1,300 per meter. But again, if in San Francisco these things are making $5 a day, in the summertime I have a feeling we can make a lot more than that, and they'll pay for themselves pretty quickly.
Are these just a matter of putting the putting a hole in the ground and then setting them in the hole?
Yes, I was trying to find Bob this morning because, in all honesty, we got this from them yesterday.
Okay.
So I haven't had a whole lot of time to prepare when it comes to the sensors themselves. But I'm guessing they're 4 inches in diameter, so the thing's about that big.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's not, you're not talking about a significant
Should be pretty
amount of
simple.
construction work. Yeah. It's just,
It says to install 10 minutes with no saw cuts. Use a hammer or core drill to create that size of hole and a maximum of da-da-da-da deep. So
Perfect.
Which-
sounds pretty simple.
You'll be in charge of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Since it's so simple.
Piece of cake.
I wasn't going to volunteer Public Works to do that until I talked to them first, but I kind of assumed that they could.
Have you spoken to the code enforcement about the sensors? Do they think that's better or not so better? What's their opinion?
Yeah. So the piece of the puzzle that was really important is we can do these parking meters. I think they're going to have some effect, even if we just got just the meters themselves, didn't get anything fancy to go along with them, just because it's going to kind of push the honest people to get out of those spaces quicker, which will free up some parking spaces, and it'll probably bug some people enough that they'll want to ride against it and walk.
Swipe of a card.
Swipe of a card. Let me keep going on this. Charging stations are something that they have not come out with yet, but they are coming out with them for 2017. It's something that Jordan was really big on. One of the issues that we have to figure out with charging stations is that for full-size vehicles, there's a common attachment for golf carts. We have golf carts in this town that are electric going back to like the 90s and 80s. So all of those attachments are all different. So that's something we would have to work on with Edison and probably Yamaha and EasyGo. The really exciting part that we found out that was kind of unintended benefit from all of this was the citation management system. Jordan has been looking into for about a year system that will make it so that we can do electronic ticketing. Because right now, Code spends a whole lot of time writing down license plate numbers and handing people their tickets. Well, through McKay, they have the ability to interface with an entire comprehensive enforcement management system. It would not handle our administrative citations, so they would still be separate. But everything involving parking and traffic, they could walk around with something that would print out tickets, and they just pop the ticket in the window, just like
Administrative meaning city stickers and.
So administrative citations, meaning they wouldn't be able to handle like building code and things like that. But anything having to do with vehicles, vehicle city permits, parking in fire lanes, that kind of thing, would all be able to be.
And the person who's ticketed would have a way to know that they've been ticketed.
So what would happen is different than now, where they use a carbon copy and they slide one and they send one in, and they have to write everything down by hand. They put in the license plate number into a database, and then it prints out a ticket for the customer, and then everything else is done digitally. So it reduces our paper by a lot.
Customer, the perpetrator.
The perpetrator.
No, thank you. That's good. Customer, I like
And
that.
with the temporary permits as well, it could. So you know how you get concerned that these temporary permits have expired, and and it could do those as well.
So our conversations with the person that we've been dealing with on McKay's end has said that they can kind of tailor it to whatever we need it to be, but it does have the limitations of not being the administrative part of it.
Well, back to the parking meters. Sure. Do we have any feel for once the Vons is moved? Is there a feeling that there will be less traffic on Metropole, or do you think it will remain the same?
So it's kind of an interesting question, because the Vons is the only business that will go away on Metropole, and everything else will stay the same. I'm assuming that there is something that will go in the place of Vons. So you still have a fair amount of businesses that will be on that street. Everything that we're putting in can be taken out. So if we need to move it and decide, okay, when the new Vons gets put in, which could be a year from now, it could be 2 years from now, who knows, we can then move everything over to Sumner if we wanted to, or if it happens to be successful, then we just install some on Sumner and get some new ones.
Okay.
So yeah, it's definitely an option. So the one thing about the parking meters that's kind of nice is if we manage to set up a system where we get some charging stations set up to incentivize people that are going green. Edison has already approved grant funding for us to install those across town. So that is something that they would essentially pay for if we could find a way to make attachments that make sense for all the golf carts that we have in town, because there are so many different types. I will be talking more about grant money soon. Any questions on parking meters?
So impressive.
All right. We're going to get out of here nice and early today, guys. All right.
Don't be so sure.
You know, it's a public forum, but it's just me and you guys up here.
Here today too, don't we?
All right.
Seems earlier.
Car sharing is car caring. I love that slogan. It is, as I said before, the best way of increasing access without increasing vehicles. We are waiting on an update from the Conservancy on their end. There's a lot of hurdles for them to go through, so I don't know when I will get back to you with that part of it. But in the meantime, a couple of things that have come up for discussion is the idea of Uber and Lyft. They, across the world, have dramatically increased mobility without actually increasing the number of vehicles. One of the extreme challenges with those companies is most cities are not actually set up to handle Uber and Lyft because they fit into different systems of taxation and regulations, different than a brick and mortar business. Everything's done via an app. Avalon is kind of different because most cities do not have enough restrictions, and Avalon, our municipal code, technically has too many restrictions to allow a company like Uber or Lyft. So something to think about. If we did want to have that as something of an option, which again the public would have to go through some hurdles themselves in order to qualify for it. As of right now, I believe with Uber, I don't know about Lyft, you are required to have doors on your vehicle, so it would be limited to full-size vehicles at this point, and I believe it requires 4 doors. So that would probably eliminate the smart cars and the Scions, but it's something of an option. We would have to change the code to facilitate having them in town. We would have to find some way to tax them just because it is all done through an app, and also amend for allowing the use of these vehicles in town. I think it's a great idea. It's something that everybody's been talking about. It was actually suggested for one of my previous roommates. But the reality is it's going to take work on somebody's end. I'm aware of that there is a company in town that's investigating the Uber situation. So it would probably behoove all of us to have something set up so that when that conversation does come to the table, that we're fully prepared to handle it.
Is this part for discussion again?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, anytime.
Okay.
Yep.
So, do we have to make it as complicated as Uber and Lyft? For example, if I had insurance and was able to list the city of Avalon as additionally insured, and our goal is to provide affordable, easy transportation for folks, what would be the damage in your ex-roommate just doing something like that?
You need the app.
Huh?
You need the app.
So if I created my own app, I paid for an app, somehow was able to advertise it based on however y'all do all that stuff. Like people have apps in town for their businesses. So I don't know why it would be so complicated, and it seems like that should be encouraged, because if it's not putting additional vehicles on the street, and maybe we don't get any money off of it, but it's a good deal for the visitor and for the local to have affordable transportation. Why
More
would it be-
accessible too.
You
Yeah.
would need 2 things.
Okay.
Business license, number 1.
Okay, that's
Number
cheap.
2, you would need a transportation permit to circulate on the streets of Avalon. Then that would tie into how we get our money from it, the tax.
Business license.
But how do we get money from the cab company?
We don't.
So how's that any different?
I don't know any.
I think.
But if everybody's out there conducting their own business, you have no regulation over it. You don't have proof that they have insurance to cover themselves. It makes us very liable.
Well, yeah, one of the nice things about companies like Uber and Lyft is they have all of that built in. So in order to drive for Uber. You cannot be an Uber driver without insurance. Before you can even sign up, you have to have proof of it, and you have to maintain it, and all of those good things. As Denise mentioned, when it comes to transportation permits, right now, outside of our own public transportation system, the cab company is the only one that has that allowance to transport customers. So we would have to, in whatever direction that you guys decided to go, would have to amend the code to allow for that.
And there's no
transportation permits.
exclusivity with the current with the cab company.
I don't believe so.
So,
I think, Mayor, you have the authority under the 1974 statute that gave the city transportation to design a system not in any size or shape of vehicle. I guess it didn't say shape, but size and type of vehicle. And what I thought your point was, as I understood your point, was rather than adopt a system that works on the mainland, that adapt to a system that would be smaller and fit here. Right. And is there some way to do that? And that would be something that staff could evaluate, I think. Yeah, I mean,
we could do it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
we could do our own little app, and we could amend the code to say if you're carrying less than 4 people, that it's a simpler process.
One suggestion that I would make is from those apps are fairly expensive to create unless you know how to do those very well. It took a whole lot of people to make that app. The other thing that is major is that people know those apps. You could put a little sign that says Uber in the parking lot, and almost every single person that got off that boat would know what that meant. But if we made our own app, then we'd run into the hurdles of nobody knows what it is, nobody's ever heard of it before, and so you're having to teach people something new versus something that they're trained for every day on the mainland.
I guess so if I was an entrepreneur, if I'm willing to go to the expense of it and do it, I guess it's no harm, no foul in a way. And maybe and so.
Also, it's possible to go to Uber and say, how about Uber Avalon?
mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Avalon Uber, yeah.
Avalon Uber.
Jordan?
Yep.
So the question on this topic for us is not who or how the system actually works, but how our municipal code allows the system to work. That's the question that we would have to address as the city. Because our code currently doesn't specifically allow for this type of activity for the general public. Like me as a person, I can't just go out and start giving people rides and charging them. So that's what we have to assess. Is that the type of system that we would like to see? And if so, what changes in the municipal code do we need to make in order to allow for that? From there, whether it's our own app or Lyft or Uber or someone else or whatever, that's not really up to us. Anyone could do however they wanted to do it. The only limitation would be is if Lyft and Uber were specifically to say, sorry, we can't accommodate your vehicles because they're golf carts. From our perspective, they don't work for us. At that point, if we said we still think this is worth it and we wanted to try and either provide seed money to someone to help develop their own app, whatever, yeah, that's what we could develop. But the core of it that we have to assess as the city is what do we need to do to our municipal code to allow for something like this if this is something we'd like to see. That's really what you have to assess. And then you have to assess within that code what ramifications will be when we make those changes. Because as Bryce said earlier, many cities are scrambling to try and update their codes to figure out how do you handle this new type of vehicle and economy. We've done a very good job restricting it. The Airbnbs, the ride sharing, we're well ahead of the curve of many, many cities that are trying to figure out how to deal with this. And so we've already got a lot of those regulations in place, whereas many other cities don't. And so then we have to figure out if we're going to change our regulations, what will that do and what impact will that have on our community?
Okay, cool.
Well put, Jordan.
Yes,
Very good.
good
Back to you,
team.
Cole.
So, I mean, is that
Answer.
an idea that pleases the council?
To me, I would like, I don't know, but it's just me. I would like us to look into that because I think again, if we're not increasing the number of vehicles and we're providing something that we would like to think would be more
efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I think
Well, we could be increasing the number of vehicles. If we open this up and say a kid wants to get into this business and his house has no golf cart right now, he goes out and buys a golf cart and gets into business.
well, and maybe in the code we say that it has to be people that have existing permits.
Okay.
And then, so the golf cart. So you're saying in reference to if we expanded it to golf carts, then, right? Because right now it's 4-door vehicles.
Right now it's not
That's-
Avalon.
It's not an
Right,
Avalon,
right, exactly.
but we could make it whatever we wanted to. Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't know about golf carts.
Well, and it's one of those things you'd have to look at. One of the things I would definitely say, just because in doing my research, and I'm sure it's not news to anybody, but Uber and Lyft have taken down several taxi companies across the world, and we would probably want to speak with our own taxi company, just because it's a small town. We want to make sure we take care of our businesses in town.
And competition is healthy.
Why this is really important is because you have some proposals. Why this discussion is really important is because you have some proposals that theoretically could add a number of over 100 units, for example, in Las Casitas, and under the current model, each person would have an opportunity to get a cart. If there's another mode of transportation to get people around, going back to this point, then that need would not exist, and you would not necessarily have to increase the number of vehicles by the 150.
And because I think we've all done it, we've picked up somebody walking down the street with their kids or whatever, and they love to hop in a golf cart and get a ride.
Right.
I mean, and like you always say, Joe, you don't think golf carts will ever be totally gone off the island, and so they're a fun mode of transportation for people to
Yeah.
hop into.
So maybe it would work and would be appropriate for this application. That way, everybody does have a ride, and can't say, "Well, there's no way to get a ride." I mean, because golf carts are very easy to get into,
Yeah.
and I think the problem there would be they would be easy to fall out of. So we'd have to have like seatbelts and stuff like that.
2 a.m.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of part of the problem is like late at night, if you want to move from one side of town to the other, or early in the morning, such as like when people get out of the hospital, if they're checked in and then they get released at 3 a.m, there's nowhere to get a ride. Mm-hmm. We need that's just one of the different ways. Or if somebody's going to work at 3 a.m. and they don't have a ride, those are areas where they're totally gray areas where we don't even have anything working at
Somebody
that time.
might be just happy as heck to pick them up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, why not? If you're going to make a couple bucks, it's what it's all about, anyways. And then also, providing the community with affordable
And
safe,
also safe is
convenient.
At 2 a.m. on a Saturday night in the middle of summer, somebody could make a killing, and it would get a whole
Literally.
lot more people home safer, where they're not trying to get behind the wheel of their own golf carts
Absolutely.
or
Exactly.
stealing somebody's golf cart.
Yeah,
I
kind
think
of
the
thing.
direction then is that, we want to look into that.
Come back with some code
Yeah.
changes
yeah.
for you to consider.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So on Mr. Jenkins' point, we are talking about expanding the number of people that can live in Avalon, while we talk about finding a way to reduce the number of vehicles in Avalon, which is a challenging thing. So with the car sharing program, even if it ends up being something where we're not going to be able to make that happen with interior access, there's still some huge advantages. Just this week, I finally have access to a full-size vehicle for the first time in my life, and I was in dire need of a full-size vehicle, and I would have been in big trouble if I didn't have one. So being able to set something up where people can use the app that I spoke about last time and be able to rent out their vehicle for a couple hours or a day when they're not using it, just so that somebody can transport a big piece of furniture or pick up a big family that they got coming from the boat. All of those kinds of things, it could be really useful. But that's another one where they would take some amendments in the code to allow for people to do that, because it would require things like business licenses and.
Because right now we're just letting our friend use our car, and that could still continue. That would still continue.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, and as of right now, there's nothing that stops people from doing that. But if I don't have friends and I still want to move things,
If you don't have friends with vehicles.
Right.
the other option that I brought to you guys last time is something with the city, where we have fleet vehicles that are on hand that we're not using. I don't know how much we have in terms of stock of that right now. We have not done the research on that, on how much downtime there is with full-size city vehicles. But it's definitely something that's an option. If we wanted to investigate it, it would be a supplement to some of the transportation programs that we already have. And different than the public renting out their own vehicles, we would have slightly more enforcement over it if we did it ourselves. But it would also require staff time and regulations and probably some safety provisions as well.
I'd be into that if the city employee actually drove the car. In other words, we rent out a truck for if somebody wants to move, but the city employee has to be there to drive and monitor the vehicle and be. I don't know. I would just be apprehensive about giving somebody a city vehicle that we're going to need on Monday, and if they wreck it on Sunday or mess it up, then we're out of a vehicle on Monday. So, but I understand where you're going here. I like the idea.
Yeah, I like the direction. The only thing I would caution when it comes to that is the cost of municipal employee is typically more than a standard driver would be. So the cost then to the public would probably be higher than it would be if they were to go with like Catalina Transportation or something like that.
Right,
Just a note, if I may, I think along the lines of Councilmember Sampson, the issue of the city operating or making available vehicles, we would want to be very careful in examining from a liability standpoint what our liability is if the vehicle's not properly maintained, if the brakes are, and so, but in terms of, and is there a private provider who could provide the?
There is actually.
Yeah, and so, but if that's something you're interested in, staff can look at those parameters.
I think Josh Buddy does a great job. Let's see, it's Catalina Transfer.
Catalina Transfer.
They got a bunch of vehicles and they're pretty much available all the time. So, and they got strong guys to help you out, and they do it safely, and they know the streets, they know the houses. They do that pretty well as far as moving. But
in terms of having vehicles that if I had, for instance, the chili cook-off, I have 6 people that are coming over to spend the day, and they're going to all be walking because I can't get them all around in a single golf cart.
But Bryce, you don't have any friends, so you wouldn't have
no friends. Right. Yeah. Does anybody have a?
I think we also want to, as a city, we want to make it available for viable businesses in town, and that's looking at our code. But as a city, I don't think we want to run businesses. We just want to make it available and then assess taxes as appropriate, licensing fees as appropriate, and then,
That's good. We're trying to get that feel from you, so he's just giving you the different options.
So are you suggesting that rather than us do it ourselves, we allow another company to do it that already has?
Well, I think our part is determining, do we want something like that in town? That's the policy decision. And then from there, the direction is, we would then direct the city staff to whatever, to make sure that our municipal code stated that this business was a possibility for someone in town to do, and these are the regulations to it, and this is the financial component to that.
There's that, and then there's, because I don't feel comfortable giving anybody our vehicles.
No, me neither.
However,
and we're not sure anybody else will be. But
what's that?
I said we're not sure anybody else will be, but we can find out.
Yeah, give me that old pickup truck. But because this isn't only just for I have a couch to move. This is I want to go into the hills, right? Yeah. So.
And that again is something that ultimately, with due respect to the Conservancy, is going to be something that they are carefully reviewing right now to see if it's something that's makes sense for them to do. Right now, I'm not discussing that part of it because until I get some feedback from them on whether it's something they want to go with, It's more about in town.
That strikes me as odd. I mean, maybe I'm hearing it wrong. Maybe I'm not understanding this, but the purpose, part of the purpose of the Conservancy is to cherish these lands and make them available to the population to come and enjoy. I mean, I can understand not wanting to have another 200 cars driving through the interior on a daily basis, but I mean, if somebody came in to do a rental company, you're talking about probably 4 cars, maybe.
So one of the Conservancy's important facets is that they track everything that goes into the interior, and one of there's a lot of moving parts that would come with a car sharing program that would allow people, additional people that right now do not have access in the interior, is that all those people would have to be tracked. As of right now, if you have a full-size vehicle and you get a Paradise Pass, you get the little slider that allows you to open that gate. We would have to have some way of enforcing that whoever owns that Paradise Pass did not give it to the next person that's renting their vehicle, so that that person would have to go and get their own Paradise Pass for the day, if that makes sense.
I think you wrap all that up in the fees that you charge as the interior. I mean, that's a...
So, and you can do that. It's just we would have to find a way to make sure that people didn't skirt around the rules, because technically, if I rented my car out to a friend and said, "Hey, man, don't go get a Paradise Pass, just use mine. It's cheaper," because
oh my goodness.
it has
I'm
to track
sure
the.
that's how people do it now. I mean, if
They don't though. It's just because when you get caught, you lose your pass.
Yeah.
If you get caught cheating that system,
So I had to take my daughter up and get her to have
Yeah.
her sign up and the whole thing.
plus we just passed this ordinance for these Scions, and I know you mentioned that, well, those aren't really made for the hills, but what we did was we made the interior available to every person who owns a golf cart now. If they want to get a Scion or one of those other cars, they can, or something that conforms to that size, like one of those other little 4-wheel drive chopped cars that we have in town.
Yeah.
Everybody the interior is available for them. I mean, every vehicle is going to take a pounding out there. Even my 4-wheel drive vehicle takes a beating. You got to constantly do repairs on it. You got to constantly make it, safe. But we made it available by passing that ordinance. That's why so many people are getting those vehicles. I don't know if they're using them for the interior. They're welcome to, but
And I there are some, and
that was a pretty generous thing that we did there because I mean,
Absolutely.
just because we opened it wide up, and it could have, it might have opened a can of worms in some areas, because like Councilman Hernandez said last time, people are flying all around town now in these vehicles. I mean, they're going faster than they need to. That's what was nice about golf carts, is you only go 10 miles an hour. And some of them hopped up can go 20, but now these vehicles can go 60, and they're going nowhere real fast is where they're going now. It's like, and you don't need to do that here.
and again,
even if they want to go in the interior, they have to play by the rules. They've got to go to the Conservancy.
Yeah.
They got to provide the insurance. They've got to pay the however much it is.
So do we.
If you go to a rental system, you don't have that step where the individual driver doesn't stop by the Conservancy, fill out a permit.
They probably will have that though, because everybody has to be accountable. Every person that goes in my vehicle has to go up there, show up. I have to be there with them. It's a big pain, but it's like that's the way it's going to be. I don't think that's going to change, because I don't want somebody out there that just gets the free pass. He just goes into the rental company, gets his permitting, and then goes out there and is not accountable to all the rules that I have to be accountable, because I'm driving out there with my family. If some maniac's out there doesn't know how to drive, if he's gonna cause danger and harm to himself, I pity the fool. But myself, I don't want him causing danger and harm to me or my family, because we're very careful when we go out there. We're meticulous. We have to sign all those waivers. We have to drive safe. We have to do it over a long period of time. So, but it's there. We got to just figure out how we do it for them. I mean,
and on 2 points. One, when it comes to the signs, I think that was a great idea. I think it's definitely useful. The benefit of this car sharing program is that it allows that same access without adding any additional vehicles at all. So, whereas we have a bunch of Scions skirting around all over the place, if I got one guy that rents out his car to 7 different people, then you have 7 people sharing one vehicle, which I think is a benefit to everybody. And Councilmember Cassidy, to your point, it's more of, with the Conservancy, it's more of they have a system in place, and we're talking about changing that system. And because their number one mandate is conservation, it has to go up the ladder, and they have to have all sorts of board meetings about it. But I don't. They sounded receptive when I spoke to them about it. They didn't sound negative. It was just we'll get back to you. So, and that takes a while when they have to have executive board meetings and all that kind of good stuff.
Conservancy has more vehicles than any other individual corporation or company on the island. So maybe they could help us out with this and lend a couple of their vehicles. I mean, there's at least 20 vehicles just sitting at Middle Ranch that are not being used, and they use them indiscriminately from time to time. They have some of those floating stickers where they can just throw it on any one of the vehicles. They could help us out with that, actually. I mean, and help us with the whole vehicle problem, because they have dozens of Conservancy vehicles parking on city streets every day. Instead of parking up at the interpretive center, they park on our streets all day, and then when they go to work or whatever they do, and then they go home in the evenings to Middle Ranch or wherever they live. But we have to carry the burden of all those vehicles parking on our streets, and that's one of the problems with parking down on all the flats. Is you drive it down any street in the daytime, and you'll see at least 2 or 3 Conservancy vehicles on every street. And they just come in for the day to work. And that's not a problem, but they have a full parking lot right up the street, and they can jockey people up and down. I mean, they can park up there.
And we have had conversations with Mr. Budrovich regarding that matter, and I know he is alerted to it. And as you say, council member, that still exists, that parking on the flats. But
and nothing's been done about that.
We continue to have that conversation with him on that issue.
Well, I'm sure that they would be more than happy to at least listen to us out, because they do take generous tax exemptions from the county, state, federal governments, and they take grant monies, and that's all tax generated monies. So I think that they should be able and should be open eared to be able to work with us because of that.
So we'll see. One of the things I always try to do with a situation like that is just give them time and then see what they say, and then I'll bring that back to you as soon as I get it. Hopefully it's positive, because if it's positive, then we'll have some new exciting things to talk about next time. The Panasonic Autonomous Vehicle Project, I don't know if all of you are aware of what has transpired with that. Panasonic approached the city with the idea of testing out an autonomous vehicle. And it's something that we're working on. Personally, I think it's a killer idea. This is a giant company that wants to come in and test a driverless vehicle in our streets, which from a standpoint for them, even though we're a town of 4,000 people, we get so many people in the summer that the marketing value for them, if it's successful, is huge. But also for us, it puts us on the map when it comes to having that conversation. One of the things that I got out of doing all of my research for what I brought to you last time is that if we can come up with these creative ways of having a community transportation plan, we can get people to give us free money and free things in order to do that, because they want to advertise or market their product. They want to test their product. Even if Panasonic came over, they did 2 little test rides and then left, it would be all over the LA Times. It would be everywhere. It would give us free marketing because of Panasonic doing the marketing for us. And also, when another company says, hey, I want to do a pilot program, then they can come here and do their pilot program, and we get the benefit of everything that brings, all the people that are coming over for that pilot program. And so I think it's a huge benefit.
Can I say something, Bryce? Yeah. So when this idea was brought to me months ago, I went, what the heck? This is like, explain this to me. Mm-hmm. And kept trying to push it aside. Well, I was in a car last weekend that was driving down the freeway, and I know we don't have freeways here, and the driver's just turning around, talking, hands are off the wheel. It was like, what the heck? And it just if a car even came near it, it would like not brake, but it's amazing. And then I started to research more in Consumer Reports. I had all these car companies that are having, this is the future.
Right. And I agree. I went to a mayor's summit last week and went to the transportation section meeting, and they were talking about them. And what was exciting looking futuristically is you can plan, Jordan, you'll love to hear this. You plan your city streets so you can end up, because cars and pedestrians and bicycles can work better together because these cars don't swerve. So then you can plan your street so that you can have places for bike lanes, and anyway, I was excited about it, and I was very excited about it.
And if you're going to have a car sharing program,
yeah,
what a better way to have to not worry about insurance so much if you don't have a driver behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And technically, at that point, you don't even need a driver's license. The thing drives itself. So
children can get in there.
That I don't know about. Yeah. But I would definitely encourage the council to give staff direction to pursue that at all costs, because that is something that I think is so huge, and it's something that I know Jordan's put a fair amount of work into it, but I think it could really be a huge benefit for us. And again, it's that direction that we're looking at. These autonomous vehicles are electric vehicles.
The autonomous vehicles are electric vehicles?
The one that Panasonic is bringing over
is electric.
Is electric. And there are some hurdles to get over. It's not seamless. Parsec was not thrilled to receive the communication that it's something that we had on the table. So there are some hurdles that we would have to overcome to make sure that it is insured properly and that we don't face additional liability with that kind of a testing.
But does Panasonic kind of carry some of its own insurance on this deal?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Parsec's concerns, one of the main one was all the pedestrians that we have on the streets.
We'd have less.
Parsec's, Joanne Rennie's concern is principally the autonomous vehicle, that no driver. And but like all of us, they're going to have to look at how they're going to have to adapt as society adapts and figure out ways. Years ago they didn't like skateboard parks, so they'll have to look at how that. And then the other thing is DMV regulations, making sure that there's authority that and provides liability protection if a municipality licenses. But it doesn't mean that it can't happen. It just means that there's as Bryce described. It just means that there are issues that need to be examined and overcome.
Something new.
But the truth is, Dave Santamont, who was with us at the last vehicle study session and is a guru when it comes to all this, he sat in one of the first board meetings where they talked about autonomous cars, and their target goal was 2050. And he says
50?
he doesn't. Yes.
50?
Yes.
Moving right. Wow.
And with that pilot program, they're fairly certain that they won't even make it to 2020 before it becomes something of a mainstream. So, again, with something like that, if we can be on the leading edge of that technology at some cost to the city, and yes, there's some gamble to it, but if it becomes this big massive thing in 5 years, and Avalon's the first place to be able to have one successfully be driving around for a year, then it's a huge benefit to us.
I wonder how much those cars are now, like the one that, if I wanted to go out and buy one. Do we have any idea how much those suckers are?
Outrageously expensive, I'm sure.
Well, Tesla's got one that's basically autonomous now.
Uh-huh.
Yep, that's what I was in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was it a $40,000 or $50,000 car?
It's
Keep
no.
going.
100.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Their base
It
model
was
is
really
80
fun.
grand. Yeah.
That is. I mean, I don't know how much. We do have limited staff. However, I don't mind us continuing to go in that direction and looking into it. I don't know how the rest of the council thinks. Bill,
With the autonomous?
if to do a demo and
I think the demo would be okay. I don't. You mean just for the city streets of Avalon, or just the whole island? I mean,
I don't know
It's just-
how.
Well, and again, and this is this is just a pilot program. There's nothing. This is not like they're moving an autonomous vehicle and here, drop it off, have the keys, have fun.
I think we could let them do their demo here. I don't think that would be a huge problem unless we have a problem, which is like some little kid runs out and the car doesn't recognize it, and which we have that all the time, or skateboarders come through, bicyclists, because let's face it, it's pretty much, there's bicycles, skateboards, pedestrians, joggers, there's dogs, animals, there's people everywhere doing different things and not always just attending to, exactly, California stop sometimes.
And these vehicles are,
it'd be
they're
interesting.
better equipped than a human being is to pay attention to all of that stuff.
It'd be
right,
interesting
which
to
is
see how they can do over here and see how they pull over. I mean, it would be quite a test because our roads are so narrow and they're so quirky. In some places they're wide, sometimes they're narrow. To see exactly how these vehicles would utilize the road, every inch of the road, like we have to utilize.
And I would, I would press upon the
I'd be
council.
okay with that.
I think the demo was the original idea when Panasonic came out. They were talking about using Avalon as a demo site for an autonomous vehicle, and there was some additional conversation that I've followed in notes that emails and so on that have on this, where then they talked about providing services of autonomous vehicles to people who are have accessibility issues, maybe seniors who can't get out. And then there was other conversation. So back to the demo idea, I think is try it. You may like it, or try it. Maybe you don't like it.
It runs up and down
It'd be
Avalon
perfect.
Canyon Road. You hit the road in your pedicab. I'll walk across the street. He'll get on his skateboard. We'll have Cindy doing something, and we'll see you.
Cartwheels across the
Cartwheels,
street.
Cartwheels, yes.
Yeah.
Horseback riding, okay.
And this is again we're talking about one of the top technology companies in the world. I would say that this is similar to the way the Bud Light for whatever would be. There would be enough advance warning that nobody would get blindsided by this. I don't think anybody got blindsided by Bud Light. They knew it was coming. There would be a whole lot of conversation about it, and I'm sure Panasonic would do a whole lot of community outreach to make sure that the community wasn't.
That in itself is worth it
Randomly.
right off the bat. If they want to volunteer their technology to come over, I mean, we can't stay in in the past, living in the past. I mean, the future's coming up and it's right here knocking on our door. I don't see a problem letting them in, especially since all the public relations and all the advertisement we'll get from that would be awesome. We need as much as we can get.
We just had the discussion.
Yep.
Fourth of the big-
So that brings me to my next point, which is similar to Panasonic, where if as we pointed out, if we wanted to go out and buy our own autonomous vehicle, it would cost us, a couple $100,000. But because technology is moving at light speed right now, people have all these new things that they want to test out that they're willing to give us for free. That that pilot program would probably cost Panasonic $1 million, and they're willing to come basically give us $1 million worth of advertising and marketing and testing for free. I think that's something we should definitely latch onto. The other thing that there is $13.7 billion in transportation funding in the state of California. Last time I was up here, I talked to you guys a little bit about that there's a bunch of grant funding opportunities. There's a long list of grants that are possible, but specifically, there is a California Energy Commission grant that the minimum is $500,000 and it has no match to it. So that is $500,000 of absolutely positively free money. The grant is an innovative mobility service demonstrations with zero emission vehicles. So everything that I've talked to you about is about enhancing the ability for people to get around in Avalon without adding new vehicles, without adding emissions to our roads. If we were to come up with some form of car sharing program, anything of that sort, that use zero emission vehicles, and we're able to do it in a creative way, we would technically be eligible for this grant.
Well, then we could, if we purchased with their grant money zero emission vehicles or low emission vehicles, whatever the thing be, then we're not having to use our vehicles. We do that, and then we've got a program.
And $500,000 buys a lot of vehicles,
A lot
or
of-
some
lot of
really
vehicles.
nice,
Lot
ready
of-
for the interior, ready for rental, being beat up. status,
'Cause I
and
don't
also
think a
putting
lot of
charging
cities-
stations throughout town.
Wouldn't we be kind of unique in the rental business, other than being a Hertz or an Avis?
Pretty much no matter what way we do this, we're going to be unique because nobody runs into our situation.
Right.
So either way, I mean, the innovative part of it is the part that's just like, oh, we can do that. Now, what would it take? The one thing I will tell you about the government is they don't give out $500,000 for free. It does take some money. It does take some work. The really important thing is we would have to get everybody on board. This would have to be an entire community set up. We would have to get all the major stakeholders in town behind us and supporting us. We would have to have a focused effort by a single staff member that for the deadline is June 30th for this thing. They would have to spend the majority of their time the next 3 months setting up a plan. With $500,000, they want to know exactly where every penny of that's going. It needs to be tracked. There needs to be a tracking system in place. We need to have a plan that fits their pages and pages and pages and pages of criteria. And with the limited experience that I've had in writing grant applications for $500,000, they're going to want a bunch. It would take continuous support from upper management and council to make this kind of deal happen. Which brings me, before we have a discussion, to our next point. And that is, since our last study session, I've been doing this in my off time, and Jordan and Denise have taken time out of their busy days to help me with it. But if this is something that you guys value, and from where I stand, having done a little bit of the research and being able to present in front of you these 3 times, it's going to take a lot. This is a problem that clearly isn't going to go away because I gave you guys handouts from 2006 when they talked about too many vehicles and not enough space, and they came up with the blue sticker program in 1987.
78.
Thank you. So there definitely is. This is something that's not going to go away. I wish that there was 2 of me so I could have a full-time job and also spend my time doing this. But in reality, if this is something that you guys want to have happen faster, we're going to have to devote some resources to it. It's either going to have to be in the form of a current staff member, a new staff member, or hiring a consultant or a traffic engineer.
Is there another cycle after this one? You know,
Another.
this grant's got to be by June 30th. Is there another cycle after this one? Because there's no way in hell we're going to make June 30th.
For this specific grant opportunity, that's unknown. But for grant opportunities very similar to this, absolutely. The California Energy Commission is constantly putting out grant opportunities that are very much in line with this. They had a zero-emission vehicle readiness plan for the region, which if we had continuous stakeholder meetings would have been a fantastic opportunity to collaborate with everyone, because the Island Company, the Conservancy are all independently pursuing zero-emission vehicle opportunities, greening their fleets. But when we can work together and find out where those opportunities overlap and align, when we can mutually support each other, many of the California Energy Commission grants we would be eligible for, but the benefit from them we wouldn't need. We don't need an electric tractor to haul trailers, but Avalon Freight Services does. So we would need to collaborate with them and say, would this type of vehicle work for you guys? Would it work? And then we can go into partnership. So then we could help go after the grant, and our community gets the benefit, and we get the benefit, but we don't need a tractor trailer. But then there are opportunities where we could simultaneously green our fleet, whether it's through a specific grant funding opportunity. So the short answer is I don't know if this specific grant opportunity will come up again, but there have been many grant opportunities, and I anticipate many grant opportunities very much along these lines, not just from the CEC, but if you go back a couple slides. Keep going. One more. That one. This is just a small sampling of the many agencies that are actively working on zero-emission vehicles, greening fleets, many of which we have direct connections with. The South Coast Air Quality Management District, that's the one that reaches us. They're obviously very interested in greening communities. The difference is we are not a target audience for them. We're not a target market because we're an island, we have a limited fleet, and we have limited pollution. So when they're thinking of cleaning the air, they think LA Basin and these bigger areas that have huge impacts. What we can bring to the table is, while we're a small market, we have huge marketability. You put your demonstration project on our streets and everyone sees the benefits of it. And we do have a measurable impact. Our vehicles do produce emissions. It may not be LA Basin, but it is still measurable and significant. And we can categorically demonstrate the benefits of their programs because we can actually show a one-for-one reduction. Whereas over town, it's hard because there's so many variables and so many interactions between other cities that you can't exactly see, well, I put in a green fleet here, what happened? Here, you can measure it. So then that's where there's huge opportunities with that. As you, from the Gateway Strategic Transportation Plan, when Yvette spoke to the council at the presentation, just in that one meeting, her coming up here and spending a few hours prior to the meeting driving around, she rambled off a whole bunch of opportunities that we could be a part of, that they'd like to see it. We haven't had full-on discussions with her since because she's no longer on the island. So now that she's not here, we have an ocean separating us. So it takes us active engagement, constantly reaching out to them to keep them connected to us. Because, again, we're an island. So when they're looking at transportation, they don't consider us. But we can take the lessons that they have, such as the Blue Line. It's a fixed route transportation system. We don't have – the Blue Line affects us in the sense that our residents go over there and may use it. But what's important to us is we also have a fixed route transportation system, the bus system. And the lessons that they've learned in trying to get people to use the Blue Line, we can apply directly to us. And so there's a transfer of knowledge that we could be benefiting from these experts who are studying it constantly. And then they could also network us into grant opportunities. So the Southern California Association of Governments, they have a plug-in electric vehicle readiness program, a Clean Cities Coalition. The Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Committee is constantly putting out opportunities to green fleets and make things happen. The governor has the Zero Emission Vehicle Action Plan, which we could say we want to be a part of that. They have a goal to put a certain number of zero emission vehicles on the streets by a certain date. Again, we are an incredibly tiny market for the governor's massive million zero emission vehicle plan, but we still are numbers that could add to it. And imagine if we went 100% zero emission vehicle, from our residential vehicles to as many commercial vehicles as possible. We'll see if they get there with electric tractors and stuff. But if we went that way, we would be a flagship city for the governor and the state of California. While we're only a couple thousand vehicles for the entire state, we are an entire community that's demonstrated its possibility and how well it works. And so I think those are the types of opportunities that we have to plug into. But the key is that we are not going to get very many Panasonic opportunities where they came and knocked on our door and said, hey, we're interested. Right. We don't know if that one will pan out. Maybe it will. We'll continue to pursue it. But the vast majority of the opportunities that we'd have to embark on, we have to be proactive and put ourselves out there. We have to sell ourselves. We have to have the policy and the vision and saying, this is what we're trying to do. This is why we're trying to do it. This is how we're going to try and do it. How can we be a part of your big effort? You know, how can we get swept up in this big stream that you've got going so we can help make a difference, not only for us, but for you, so we can demonstrate for you, for your policies and practices, what actually works and how well it works. Long Beach is doing an amazing job pursuing innovative technology and policies for their city. If you go out there, you'll notice I think they even have the wireless charging stations for their buses. They're greening their city fleets. They're doing a lot of great work. It's amazing. But it's a big city. Unless you know exactly what you're looking for, you could easily miss it. When you come to Avalon, you put one of those on our streets, every single visitor sees it. It has high visibility. So that's what we talk about when we've had conversations with the governor's office. When I was at one of the auto shows and met with the governor's, I forget his position, who's helping move forward with this Zero Emission Action Plan, is that you put it on our streets, we're not the target audience, but the million people who come to our community, and many of them are from California, that is your target audience. And so what we've done is help give market introduction. So now this technology, these policies are not new to everyone. They are understood. They're, oh yeah, I saw it on Catalina and it works and I'm on board. And so when they propose it in their community, it can take off a little bit better. So we could be that place where we get a lot of investments into our community at some cost. We definitely are going to have to put in some investment, but at less cost than the market value. Plus, everybody loves the idea of a sustainable island community. I mean, so many companies, like David mentioned, David St. Amant mentioned in his network of communities and businesses, I mean, just the idea of helping come in green and island community is just so attractive. They're, I mean, watering at the mouth because they'd love to be a part of it. But we have to be the innovators that step up and say, this is what we'd like to do. We don't know all the answers, but help us get the answers, help us what to do. But it's going to take a specific and concerted effort on our part. We are going to have to make it a defining policy and a practice, and constantly be going after it, and constantly knocking on people's doors, and constantly following up with them. Because Yvette came here and is excited, but now she's gone.
Yeah.
And unless we continue to tap her and say, we want to be a part of it, what are you doing? How can we be a part of it? That's why constantly going over to meetings over town is so important, because every meeting won't be relevant to us specifically, but it helps keep us on the map, and it gives us opportunities to say, how can we be a part of it? So, I mean, this small snippet of grant opportunities is really a small portion of what's out there. And that's where I think the benefit of having a professional traffic engineer, the consultant level, is this is their world. They're tapped into this entire world, and they know all of these people. And so not only would they help us maybe with traffic flow, but they could say, oh, and here's the grant that would help pay for it. And here's the other people that you can partner with. And here's the opportunity that you can work with it. And so those types of connections that we don't have as staff, we don't have the time as staff or the expertise as staff to be able to pursue, someone like that could help us. So if this is a value that we believe is so important and wanted to pursue, that's the kind of level that it would take to actually fully follow through with it. So the opportunities sound great, but we haven't realized any of them yet because we just haven't been able to follow through with them. And all of these programs require some level of a project that's either shelf ready or shovel ready. Everybody wants money, and we can always say we need money to help us out with programs. But they're going to say, what specifically do you want money for? What are you going to do, and how are you going to measure it? And that's a question that we have the institutional knowledge on our end. We know what our community needs, what our constraints are. We don't have the expertise knowledge to kind of apply, the practices and the general policies that are going on and figure out how can we make that work. So that's kind of the constraints that we're working against, and that's the gap that we'd have to bridge. And so that's really the big question is, how much do we want to bridge it, and how much do we want to invest into it to get that return on the investment, which can be significant.
Well, and then my question would be, everything we're doing now, I mean, we're gonna probably be making some short-term solution on our own right now, and then we go, yeah, but we would not. This eventually would like a real traffic study and a real whatever. So I guess we could still move along with our baby steps and some of the, So let's say we say, yeah, the parking meters are great, and let's go forward with that. Then we get this traffic guy who really deals with a lot of stuff, and he goes, well, I guess we'll move them. But, because...
Well,
yeah, we have to weigh the cost benefit for each one. Parking meter specifically, worst comes to worst, we just surplused, I think, 34 items from the city. Well, yeah. Worst comes to worst, we would surplus them, sell them at a little loss, have the experience. That's the worst case scenario for that specific solution. But that is definitely the question. Is each time you have to evaluate what's the cost benefit, what's the potential return, what's the damages. And so we have to kind of work through that as much as possible. Yeah. And there are opportunities that are unique to us that we could just tackle now and kind of, it wouldn't have a huge impact on an overall system. But it is. That's the whole thing. When do you put the cart before the horse? When are you taking action? When are you well planned ahead? That's not always the easy answer, especially because there's so many paths that we can take. And, which one do we want to pursue?
Mayor, I think, if I could, sorry, Jordan. I think the point is, what's our plan? And that's where a traffic engineering people knowledgeable in the kind of things that Jordan and Bryce are talking about, where examining our situation. Because if you look at the circulation element of our general plan, the 2013 plan, it's pretty weak. And because it's weak, we had a situation like we've had with Vaughn's, and where there's circulation is going to be a real issue. So what is our plan? What is our short-term? What is our long-term plan? And then where do these component parts fit in to improve circulation? And that's why I had understood when I talked to Denise her and I talked about this, is that the concept of bringing in, having someone focus in on a plan that strategically that we could take advantage of those things that Jordan was talking about and Bryce is talking about. That would, I think, be really useful. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're doing this. We're reaching out here. We're reaching out there. And how does it all fit into a cohesive system? And so I'm really excited about that opportunity that you would hopefully be supportive of pursuing that
I think
circulation.
that's coming up on the slide.
So before
It could be.
before we get into a situation where there's just too many vehicles and there's nothing you can do with it, I mean, what we can do right now is come up with some solutions foreseeable that there's going to be too many vehicles here, and most people say there are too many vehicles. I want to start talking about that before the last study session is over, and then we haven't talked about what is the end game. How many is the maximum amount of golf carts can we have, and the maximum amount of blue stickers, that is regular full-size vehicles, because we're reducing the number of full-size vehicles and the number of commercial vehicles is growing exponentially. It concerns me. You can sell a commercial vehicle sticker, so you can keep it basically forever. You can sell it with your business. Maybe you're not selling the blue sticker itself, you're just selling the business, but the commercial vehicle sticker goes along with it. So my concern about that is the people who've lived here the longest and invested the most in the community have to eventually relinquish their blue sticker to somebody, and I'd like to see that program more sustainable for the people that own those stickers. Just like we've done it for the commercial holder, because you can sell a commercial vehicle now with a business for $100,000. I mean, some ridiculous amount of money you can get for, yes, they're marketable.
Joe, can I? So I did a whole lot of work and research and trying to figure out how to tackle the capacity problem.
Okay.
And last session, one of the things that I talked about is, if you attack any one of those things from that standpoint, you're going to run into some serious roadblocks in terms of public opinion as well as impacting business, which we learned in the short term. So the reason why I'm presenting all of this stuff to you, and my next couple slides are going to talk about a traffic engineer and the fact that I've spent the last 4.5 months dealing with this. The traffic engineer has spent 20 years dealing with this. So although I learned in a short time, what are the problems? What do the experts say? I went out and asked a bunch of questions. Is it really right for Avalon? I don't know. I've done a bunch of research and I think good salesmanship to present it properly so that it is a viable option. All the research I've done suggests that traffic engineers are the ones that like parking meters and nobody else does because they work. But if you approach it from the standpoint of cap it at this point and nobody gets any more, you disenfranchise an entire segment of the population, and I would be very, very cautious when it comes to that.
Well, we got to have some kind of foresight here. Okay, so I don't care if it's not popular and I don't get elected for it. I went down trying. That doesn't matter. What matters to me is we're going to try to do the right thing for the future of Avalon. Okay, if somebody doesn't like it, I mean, and if there's individuals that are not going to like everything that we do up here, and we get it all the time. Every decision we make, we get scrutiny from both sides, criticism, and we get pounded constantly about things decisions we're making. This seems to be the most important to me because we're getting impacted to the point to where there's not going to be any more parking and there's not going to be anywhere to drive. Right. In other words, like we've discussed, you live up on Tremont, you drive downtown to go to work and there's nowhere to park, so you end up parking over on Marilla. So you're walking just as far from there as where you started off driving from. So
all of these ideas, the purpose of all of these ideas is to accomplish the same feat of putting a cap on the number of vehicles without actually putting a cap on the number of vehicles. Because then what you do is, what happens if you wait
a minute now. No. When we start when they build this big complex over here and every single person wants another vehicle and we got to do 88 more apparently we're going to have to do 80 out at Hamilton Cove. I mean, this is never going to stop. I mean, if we don't address it, but if are you saying what you're coming up with is going to address these issues?
Absolutely. So the idea behind it is,
I'm glad, because I'm not getting that yet. I'm still seeing that we're getting more and more and more vehicles And the people who've lived here the longest and invested the most are getting shafted. And
Let me, and to that point again, one of the main values was fairness, and in the interest of fairness, the problem is right now the system is lopsided, and it's designed to be lopsided to value long-term residency, because it is extremely valuable for people to live here for a long time. We get their skills, we get their input, we get their tax dollars. It is a value for us to have long-term residents. At the same time, if you say 2,000, not a single one more than 2,000, then if I'm number 2001, I don't have any options. What this allows us to do is it allows us to give those people options, where instead of, no, you can't have a golf cart because there's too many, we say, you don't need a golf cart. You have all of these wonderful programs that we put in place that the government and places like Panasonic are willing to pay for, because we can be that test subject, because we can be that supporting marketing firm for them, right?
I'm getting it.
So it effectively has the same point. It just, instead of putting it in a box, it's going, let's look at the creative solution. Instead of looking at it as, we're going to have the same amount of vehicles, because if you cap it, you're not going to cap it at less than what you have right now, because if you cap it at less than what you have right now, then people are going to have to get rid of their vehicles, and then you're going to run into private property concerns. So if you capped it right now at exactly what it is, you would still have the same traffic problems that you have right now. Right. There is the blue sticker program is continually dwindling down. One of the slides that was mentioned to be put on here
that's
was
a problem. I don't want it to continue to dwindle down. I think people should be able to keep their stickers in their families.
But what I'm suggesting is, if we can make these programs happen, if we can invest in making this happen, right? Because again, me putting in my hour or two a week that I'm putting in right now, I'm going to have a whole different amount of impact than when I was putting in 30 hours a week and lobbying to person, walking downtown going, hey, I have this idea. I know it's crazy, but in order to impact these people, if I was showing up on Tony Budovich's door every single morning, I promise you I would have a much better answer than I do right now in terms of the access to the interior. So what I'm saying is, before we say this can't work, let's invest in it. It's something that's going to be a permanent problem. It's possible that you'll get a traffic engineer and he'll say you need to put a cap on the number of vehicles. And at that point, you definitely probably want to listen to him. But he might also say, hey, imagine what this town could look like if we found a way to have autonomous vehicles, where one person to one vehicle, instead of having that, you have 7 people to one vehicle, and they all use it whenever they need to use it, and they just go and they drive it and they drop it off and they go around, they drop it off. There's people walking everywhere, because this is a walking town. It should be a walking town. It's one of the most beautiful places to walk. People spend all this money to come over here just so they can walk around town and check out all the cool stuff. If we can give them more cool stuff to look at that people will pay to bring over here, they will pay us to bring over their stuff so that other people can look at it. I think it's definitely something that we should invest in.
Councilmember Sampson or Mayor, I don't know who I'm supposed to ask this permission of. Is it something that, Joe, because I've heard you mention the blue sticker stuff maybe 3 times.
Yeah.
So if that's something that you and I could start a conversation on, we could go through that part of our code.
Yeah.
And then we could come out with the things that you would like the council to address further at another time. Would that?
Yeah, that would be great.
At the next
That would be
That's a
great.
good solution. And I kind of mirror, and you two can meet, but I agree with you on that.
Would you like to be part of that?
No, you two are
We would love
very
to have you.
capable.
Okay, that'd be great. I would love to talk to you about that, because I have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of people who are really concerned about that.
we'll
And then
set up a
I can bring
time
that back. We can do research. I'll bring that back at the next study session. That way we can.
And then
'cause I
everything
do
else
think it needs to be
encompassing around that you're talking about, makes more sense. But that's something that really disturbs me. And then the amount of golf carts is like, and where we're going in the future. And so I appreciate where you're going with this. And the sustainable community thing I like, but until we get a solar grid for our energy system out here, I don't understand how it's going to be sustainable, and we're going to meet any green initiatives without having Edison get on board, and we put up a solar grid so that we're not just burning a bunch of diesel fuel and pretending like we're a sustainable community.
Well, but in that, you know, and
but
again,
I appreciate it. I appreciate the dialogue and the conversation.
And when
for
it
sure.
comes to the green initiatives, this is not a full power conversation, because that's not something I know anything about whatsoever, other than the fact that they could do solar, but it would be expensive. This is about, from a pure transportation perspective, there is right now, by June 30th, which is 2.5 months away, $500,000 up for grabs, positively, absolutely for free.
Okay, so Mike, the question is
it something that we can devote resources to?
that
Is it something that we can devote resources to right now? I don't know. In order to hire a traffic engineer, it would probably be enough money that you guys would have to vote on it. So you're waiting on the May 2nd council meeting to even
All
vote
of
on
this
it.
has
And
to
then hire
go
someone.
back as an action item to
Yes.
the council in a duly noticed meeting. So
Right.
that's something that would
So-
We're just
would
trying to
have
get
do.
consensus if they want us to bring it forward for.
well, I guess my concern is, since this is April, and you have the three main stakeholders. So first of all, let's say if we said, okay, let's bring in this traffic guy, how is he going to develop a relationship with those three entities and do all the research that's necessary to get it out by June 30? And I don't know, Jordan, you're
Do
sitting
we
in the
need
back.
to do that, or do we
I have
direct
slides for
our
that.
staff to do it?
So
I mean, we have-
just
Yeah.
so that I can bring it in a format that's
Oh, here we
Oh,
go.
here we go.
helpful for you guys. Thank you. The pros of doing it ourselves. If we added another job, it's adding another job for a resident, which I'm always a big fan of.
You're
They,
gonna try to, that's capable of putting together a grant and working with stakeholders? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I think, Mayor, if I may, I think we're talking about a plan. We need to know strategically what is it among these choices that how are we going to integrate all of those together? And that's where I think the conversation before was that if you bring Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Olson said, is there opportunities now and then there are in the future? We need to get a plan together so that we're not doing this. We make sure the parts are working
Piecemeal.
together, that there's a cohesive plan. Here's the strategy. And that may take a little time, as I think the Mayor Pro Tem, I don't put in words in his mouth, but I think it takes a little time to do that. And so that's just the thought.
and from my standpoint, in terms of the doing it ourselves standpoint, that was me. And I got, volunteered and kind of took it upon myself to dive into it, coming from a very limited knowledge, but a vast amount of knowledge with Avalon, and also some pretty decent relationships with stakeholders. But if you were to ask me today if I was ready to put together an application, if I was working 40 hours a week for a $500,000 grant, I couldn't give you 100% certainty. I could say, yeah, I'll try, I'll get it done, and I could get it done. Would it be accepted? I don't know, because I don't have the knowledge of grants of that size.
But if we gave the direction for city staff and then we utilize the resources at a higher level of Mr.
Saint Amant?
I mean, that's a possibility too.
Absolutely.
That he could assist with a bigger oversight, and if we had staff resources to work on it now, it's possible.
Let me, if I think it's a good conversation. We have about $75 million in capital improvements. We have a mole. We have Pebbly Beach Road. We have situations that are very concern. And so the question of where we focus staff on, I would respectfully just say that we need to be certain that we're focusing them on the most important. We have seawall issues. We have a wastewater treatment plant that needs focus. This is important, and how it all fits. That's the advantage of having someone come in from the outside, is that we can continue doing the things, and staff can, that they're doing, but also we can have someone focused on this initiative if the council thinks it's appropriate. But as far as diverting staff away from $75 million in public works projects that need to be implemented and monitored and all of that, I would suggest that might be not maybe the wisest move.
This grant opportunity came up. I want to say sorry, Denise, about 2 days after our last study session, and I was scrambling with a brand new job, and emails were flying back and forth on who was going to be on this conference call. Jordan is probably our resident expert outside of Audra when it comes to grants, and he was so busy that Denise was on that call. Thank you for that, by the way, being on that call to ask all the questions on what it took to get that grant to happen. Again, when it comes to staff time, it's one of the challenges. We have people that have the knowledge, but those people also have 50 other things they're doing with their day, which is one of the extreme challenges.
To be clear, I think we're really talking about an additional staff member. We weren't talking about staff that's here to be pulled away from their other jobs. So I did run by Bob Mesher, the finance director, what kind of funds we had in an existing budget, and we had budgeted for a remember that part-time street person, and I didn't ask him the amount that we had in there, if that could even get us started with a part-time person between now and the end of our fiscal year. Anyway, so we're really looking, even if it's in the next fiscal year, we're not asking you for a yes or no answer, believe me, right now. We're just, if it's even an idea you're thinking about, if vehicles and all this direction that we keep talking about, if it's something you want to concentrate and employ, mainly their concentration would be on moving all of this forward.
And I guess my question, okay, going back to the grant, right this moment, we wouldn't know what we were applying for, right? There is,
me and Jordan have a million ideas on the subject, but
so
are they viable ideas?
It
would take a bunch of research.
And if Jordan, if you want to pop out here too, but I guess I'm thinking to go the traffic engineer route going forward, so we can get that big umbrella of where we want to go, and then when those monies come available, we can be more specific. Because I mean, we don't, I don't know who's out there in the community. And number one, we couldn't just pluck that person out of the air. We have to advertise for the position and do all that. So we did get somebody. That's going to take a couple of months.
Didn't the guy show up here?
Now we're May.
Didn't your friend show up here that was a traffic study expert?
Yeah, we'd have to go out.
He's retired.
Spoke to
He's
Mr.
retired,
Jenkins
so
about
he's not
this,
gonna
if
help
it's
us.
An RFP or an RFQ.
He's definitely going to help us. But I think.
But he's not the guy to do the whole project.
Probably not.
We could.
Okay.
Maybe though there are resources that he knows or people he knows that could be helpful in identifying. But also we haven't developed the 2017-2018 budget that where you will and we're going to look at. And I haven't been through one of your budgets yet with staff. So if I think the point about having a plan in place that we can then work off a game plan and having someone help us put that plan together. And then staffing is going to be a budgetary issue. Where are the most critical issues? Where should we have staff? Maybe are staff placed in the right position? Where could they be more effective in terms of achieving the goals that you have? And those are going to be the budget issues that we're going to be bringing to you as part of it. But if to move this forward, if there's some consensus, we can bring back the ideas Ms. Ratty said, and everyone others about getting a firm to come up with a plan, and not just a plan that sits on a shelf, but a plan that would help us target where we can be most effective.
I mean, I guess, when you all meet, what do you realistically think? What is your opinion on the best way to go? To get a traffic engineer, hire somebody from the community, and you must have had a.
So it's one of those challenging things where if I had two of me, I would say you spend $5,000 on a traffic engineer to assist somebody that's already working on it. To bring somebody in brand new off the street, one of the cons I put on there was a learning curve. And there's a pretty steep learning curve when it comes to this because it is a unique problem and it's very delicate and intricate when it comes to that kind of thing. The strange difference between somebody that lives here is traffic engineers are going to come in and say, we need to do this, and then we're going to sit here and tell them, oh, no, you can't do that. And so the one thing I really don't want to do is go reach out for somebody's help and then everything that they then write us a report to suggest that we just say no to.
Well, I think you're prejudging, though, Bryce. I think not everyone from the outside is stupid, and I'm not suggesting that you're suggesting that. I'm just saying that you might look, for example, there was a general plan that you've done 2013. Ms. Ratty and I have talked about this. There was a circulation element that was done. Those people should be very familiar. In fact, they highlight a number of issues in the circulation element of things that we are talking about here. Maybe that the people who did that might be of some value because of their insight into the island and their skills as traffic engineers, not as makeshift ones.
Correct.
But as traffic engineers, it might be of some value in helping us.
Definitely. Yeah, and again, for me, you asked me what my opinion of the subject is, and the truth is, it's the one thing I really can't answer for you, because I don't know which is the best option. The advantage of hiring a staff member is that knowledge is compounding. So then we have a resident expert that's on staff for the next 10, 15 years, whereas a traffic engineer would be it might be a one-shot kind of thing or a couple shots. But we won't have somebody to go ask the question every time we needed it because it's not across the hallway. A traffic engineer is going to have 20 years of experience and probably a degree in the field and have extensive outside knowledge that they could then bring in, which I think is a huge benefit. If you were to ask me as of right now, what I would suggest, I would probably suggest the traffic engineer, just because with that grant looming, if there's any shot of it happening, it's going to happen with somebody that's already an expert.
Again, I just feel the timing isn't going to work. It's again, we go out to RFQ, we find the traffic engineer, he comes in, he works with staff, and then he goes out, and I mean, depending on the scope of what we want him to do, then decide what we write to the grant.
No.
It seems impossible to me.
Not 10 weeks.
We're not thinking that the traffic engineer is for the grant right now at this time because of the timing.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But
I
our
was
whole
misunderstanding.
circulation of everything, and
Yes.
to me, the traffic engineer, consultant, whatever you want to call it, before we even spend the money to place, this is my opinion, not the two boys, young men. They're like my boys, though, that before we spend the money putting parking meters anywhere, I would want somebody to say, oh, the flow of traffic. No, you really need to consider this. You've got a Vaughn's project that might be happening here. And so, yes, Oli, the timing and a mirror, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, I think the reality of the CEC grant for June 30th for creating a program that we want to apply for, I don't think that could happen. The only potential project that could be viable that I think could apply would be the Panasonic project. And so we floated that to them saying, hey, we still have a lot of things to work out if we can even continue to pursue this program. We're still going through the steps. But if this grant, I think this grant could fit for what we could set up a program for. And if so, we should continue to pursue it. So that's the only opportunity I think for this particular grant. I think what this grant opportunity could do is it could be kind of the impetus to help galvanize the community and the city and stakeholders to meet together and say, hey, here's a grant opportunity. Together, what kind of opportunity would we pursue on this specific one? But then more broadly, as other opportunities come up, how can we kind of fit together? So we're kind of getting ahead of the curve and not waiting for a grant opportunity to come up and then going, ooh, what should we do for this one? We've kind of continued and already had the conversation with these other stakeholders so that as opportunities come up, you then go, oh, we've kind of been talking about this thing. Now let's mold it towards this funding opportunity. Then we can go after that. So we're kind of hitting the ground running, I guess.
Right.
So to me, that's the benefit of it is the reality, if we were to try and create our own program for this grant, I just would be really impressed if we pulled that off. But what we can get out of it in the long term and setting ourselves up for the next grant opportunity, that's, I think, the big benefit would be saying, hey, guys, you want to get together? Would something like this appeal to you? And if everybody gets together and says, yeah, that sounds great, then we can kind of continue that conversation and go, okay, moving down that path, and what other things are you trying to deal with? Because that's the hard part with grants is sometimes you don't know exactly what's eligible, and so you have to tailor your project towards what they're going to fund.
Exactly.
But you have to have some idea of what projects you can do in order to then say, okay, which ones do we need to take to the next step? And in order to do that, we have to talk to the many different stakeholders who could be involved.
I think continuing a dialogue with the stakeholders number one, to see where their goals are in terms of green and all of that stuff, all that environmental stuff, to see where they are. So then, yeah, it's easier to put the puzzle together. Then with the research and the information we get from, if we go this way with the traffic person, then you've got their communication on what they're thinking, and then you got the engineer stuff, and then you meld all that together, and then, does that make sense?
No, you're absolutely right, and I think that's the benefit is locally we have a lot of institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
We definitely are the experts as what goes on in our streets, what the true impacts are. What we don't have is the expertise of how to match them up with grants, what other solutions are being targeted for the same type of problem that we have. And so that's where an engineer could come in and go, oh, well, you're talking about this type of thing, and this is what we've done for that. Right. And so that's where they're able to translate apples into oranges for us. Because we're looking at the blue line saying, well, that doesn't apply to us. And they're saying, well, it's a fixed route system, and they're trying to link that first mile, last mile, and that's the same problem we have. I live on Upper Marilla, and I don't want to walk down the hill to take the bus. It's the same thing for everyone else who's blue line. It's a couple blocks away. I'll just take a Lyft or an Uber. Right. So that's the principle of what they're trying to address is exactly the same. And so that they can translate that for us. Then we go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. This is how we can improve our own system.
Okay.
But in partnership and in concert with the other stakeholders, is when the one meeting we had with the Island Company regarding Panasonic, because they might need to use some of their property to do a pre-pilot test, they kind of quickly went over some of their efforts that they're looking into for vehicles and fleets and greening them. And I was blown away. I mean, I had no idea they were working on all this. And I went, shoot, we want to do the same thing. We should really be talking all the time. We should be collaborating because I just saw a grant that you probably could have gotten that we were eligible for, but I didn't need a tour bus. So, but you do, and we could have gotten a green tour bus. This would have been amazing. So yeah, that ongoing dialogue with our stakeholders, I think, would be critical for us to be able to pursue any of these opportunities, and then to have a traffic engineer translate it for us, and then expand to us on where we can find funding, and then just give us answers. Even, I think you're absolutely right in how that would lay out and how it could work.
Oh,
Excellent.
So we're on
Very good.
time. Oh, we're narrowing it down. 15 minutes to go. Just keeping you on.
Oh yeah, no, I think we're ready for discussion time.
So on the deal with the traffic engineer, then if we're kind of think this sounds like a good idea, then we ask them to put together something for the next council meeting.
Yeah.
Does that seem to be
As soon as we can get to it, yes.
Yeah, what
I don't want to promise it, Mayor, if I can't deliver it.
what you could do is provide an authorization, and what you could do is for your meeting of the 18th is to notice a special meeting that would occur the same time as your regular meeting, and the item then could be added as a special meeting item that would authorize us to proceed with whatever your choice is, if you wish to do that, or we would have to wait till the May meeting, whatever is your pleasure. But both options are viable, and if
I guess the question to the council would be, do we see the urgency to put it on the 18th, or can we wait till May?
Well, if we're not talking about pursuing this $500,000 grant, then the urgency steps away. But
Could we use the grant money to pay the consultant? No.
I like the way you're thinking, though, council member. I
That's
like
not
that.
a stupid question.
No, that with that grant, if we use it to pay the consultant, the proposal that it would take would be more costly.
That's the holdup, right? Is the budgetary commitment?
Well,
right?
we would if the council is saying that you wish us to proceed in this manner, then we would have to budget funds from available funds in our current budget. In the future, though, your point. In the future, though, once we get a plan in place, it may be that there is possibilities for eligibility of certain costs associated with a grant application.
Well, we're hot on this subject, so I mean, amongst probably 100 other subjects, but this is something that was important. I mean, important enough for us to show up 4 extra days in the last 4 months, and do a lot of research and have our staff do the research. I think we ought to go ahead with this. I mean, just my opinion. So
well, in conjunction with that, we've been talking about this we're on our 3rd year.
Yeah.
So we're now getting to it.
We're starting
and this is sort of we're finally making
Yeah.
the decisions of the policy to move us forward on
Yeah.
transportation. So,
This is
I mean,
good.
I think it's important.
So
And
So,
to
and let
answer
me
your-
ask it just real quick, because you said there's money in the budget currently, and it will take us a while to get this engineer, but can we carry that money over?
Oh,
Can we
you can ca-
earmark it to not spend it just because it's sitting there between, or is somebody going to come and say, well, we kind of really need that money?
Well, no. I mean, I think you have the authority as the council to tell us to hold money or to not spend it or to use it for some other purpose, and we can figure that out ourselves. If your desire is to proceed, then we'll figure out the way to do that.
Because unless the staff is going to come back and say, well, yeah, we haven't spent that money yet, but now we really do need, whether it was for
Well, it's
roads or
called
whomever.
it's called the last minute spending thing in local government, and
Oh, right,
and,
right.
and maybe
used to do that.
you tell us if you want to proceed, then we'll figure out the way to do it and we'll bring it back to you.
Expenses rise to meet the budget.
So I think we proceed in whatever that dollar amount is, if we can hold on to it, unless staff comes with some real reason why it needs to be spent this fiscal year, if we could save it.
So you're talking about earmarking that money to go towards the traffic
That's
engineer?
my thought. Yeah.
Let us, and also, Madam Mayor, if I may, let us look at other maybe where there might be
Yes.
some other unspent
Yeah,
funds
okay.
that we could use, and we'll
I
come
mean,
up with
I
a
guess
plan.
the
Because I
point
haven't
is-
given up on that Front Street person that's going to
okay.
take care of everything.
Okay.
It was just
Yeah.
To answer your question, Councilmember Sampson, actually, yes. Not this particular grant, but the CEC just had a grant that closed, GFO 16601, Zero Emission Vehicle Regional Readiness and Planning. And that's 100% what it was for regions to get together and plan. Because they recognize, especially small communities, we don't have the resources to come up with plans. And so the state fundings have started to recognize this, and they're trying to provide more funding to help people plan, so then you can actually apply for a grant. And so they had this one out there. But again, we would require collaboration with all the stakeholders because we're the city, but collaboration is looked upon more favorably in grants. So when you show public-private partnerships, when you're showing continuity between different stakeholders and the impact, that's what they really like to see.
which is what you guys are doing too, right? I mean, we're reaching out. We're beginning to, at least.
We're beginning to, and we'd have to kind of set up more of a, I don't even know if you'd want to call it a traffic committee who meets with the different stakeholders frequently to discuss these things. But it's one of the things where a regional readiness plan, we as the city ourselves couldn't just apply for that. We'd have to kind of involve everybody. But that sort of grant funding opportunity would have paid for a plan. It would have paid for a person to come and do a study and help us figure out what do we want to have for our region. And so, again, those types of things are out there. And this one's already passed, but they do constantly kind of come up. Things like this come up. And so that's where I was saying I think the benefit of getting everybody together is we may not be able to go for a specific opportunity right now. We may miss the boat on it. But opportunities very similar to it will come up, and we'll be ahead of the game. So then this time, when the next time it pops up for a regional readiness and planning grant, we can go, oh, we've talked about this, we're on board, let's make it happen. And
Great.
that's where we could really take advantage of those types of things. So the answer is
Great.
yes, grant money could pay for stuff like this
Okay.
if we're ready for it.
Are
Great.
there grant monies to pay for these parking meters?
I'm sure there are.
Probably is.
So if we like this concept, do you imagine with this thing, if this is something we want to go forward, we wouldn't budget it till next fiscal year unless we can get grants, something, and so try to go both ways on the parking meters? Because we seem to kind of like these parking meters.
Yeah.
It depends. I think when Bryce, and I forget what slide it was on, he brought up where in planning, there's different budget types of things that we'd have to plan for. And even if we get grants, we're still going to have to put in some money because we either have to put in money for a plan or we'll have to match for the infrastructure. Or even if there is a grant, you have to pay for part of it. So we still have to budget
Sure.
a significant amount of money if we want to do this in those different kind of areas.
Right.
I think one of the things that a traffic engineer does, as we experienced with Yvette, and as I've gone to a couple of regional planning meetings where I've met with the traffic engineer, in just a few minutes of conversation and kind of describing our situation, they all go, oh, you would be perfect for this grant, and you'd be great for that. And that problem, this would help you out with that. Now, when you start getting into the meat of it, it becomes a little bit more complicated, and you start having to narrow it down. But those are the types of things that, an engineer does. It doesn't just say, you should paint this street with a stripe. They kind of bring in a full scope of it, and they bring in those other connections, like the slide with the other agencies that are doing stuff. They know all those players, and they could say match us up with different funding opportunities.
So we wouldn't be doing anything with these until after our traffic engineer, and assuming the traffic engineer then agrees with the parking meters. And then we could either look at funding or consider putting some money aside in our budget for next year.
Yeah, considering the base cost that we looked at before the enforcement piece of it is about $55,000, I would recommend having a professional just give their stamp of
Blessing.
approval on that
Okay.
before you trust
Perfect.
the two of us.
Good. Okay, that's good.
May 2nd.
Okay. Good. Other than what Joe's, and we're going to have another meeting, besides the fourth one, because I think we're supposed to stop at 10 today. I think we were supposed to stop at 9. But anyway, 10. Okay. Because I think we've got all of the information, but then there's the things, and I think we all probably want some input into what are those little small things that we can do now to maybe make a difference.
I don't think we talked about residential. We basically talked about downtown and parking and traffic overall.
Right.
I know we talked about residential issue, which I think is
It's a big
still
one.
looming.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. And I think there are some things that we can probably do that doesn't really impact some big picture
Right. They
too
won't throw a
much.
monkey wrench in the whole
Exactly.
process that
Yeah,
these
so-
guys are working on.
And we can bring that back to you. The big thing we wanted to do was a step by step,
No, it's been great.
rather than just let's talk about parking meters and then
This
not
is
talk
what I
about
have
it anymore.
for potential future one is the change of municipal code, some of the changes to you. Blue sticker, maybe Joe and I, if we meet enough before that, we can bring that back. And then, well, of course, continue the dialogue with stakeholders and then to address some residential parking. And I think I have some of your ideas, Oli, if you and I could meet so I could pass it on so we could be prepared.
One of mine is, and it's probably in there, is
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
is this that the 72 hours that allows people to park on the streets from Friday to Monday, and they don't, so, and I think that happens on Catalina and on Descanso, and I don't know
You mean
about,
having to move your vehicle every 72 hours?
yeah, I don't know, because people park on Descanso on a Friday, they take the boat, go over town, and then they come back on Monday. Well, the people can't park in front of their homes because these people haven't left their vehicle parked at their place of business.
Oh,
Or
because they're
something.
parking them on the streets.
Yeah.
So you're talking about adding that 72-hour.
No,
Oh,
shortening
they're
it.
shortening it, so
Shortening
they
it.
would have to move
Oh,
their
shortening
vehicle.
it.
Yeah, at least for one side of the street or something.
And
I
it
don't
would
know.
be it was more that weekend thing because it seems like it works really well on the street sweeper days, but that Friday to Monday when there's not street sweepers, that's where I think I don't want to call it abuse, but that's where the abuse.
No, I agree with that. That happens all through the Avalon Bowl as well, where cars are just left for 4 or 5 days and somebody's over town and there is no requirements.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I think that's a good one.
And I'd like to say one last thing that I wanted to let you all know how valuable these two
I know.
young men are to me. I came in tears late one day into Jordan's office, and he can only take so much of my eyes welling up because I was like,
And then he
I don't know
joined you.
how I'm going to do this, how we're going to pull this off. And then I pulled him away from what he was working on. He got on the phone immediately to Bryce, who called right back and said, tell Denise, don't have a heart attack. We'll cover her. So
Right.
they've covered me, and I can't thank them
No,
enough.
they're
Wonderful.
great. And Dudley too, if he's been still having impact or input into this process.
Well, he's been very impacted with the
Absolutely.
vehicle thing. So
Yeah. So it's been a
He's
great
the one that
team.
keeps me honest.
but he does. So he's our expert.
And to just add to the codes that from our first meeting that we talked about, there's a lot of updates in our municipal code regarding the stickers and stuff that I think needs to happen as well. There's been quite a few conversations. I know I've had a couple different ones with Dudley about just community concerns. And, Dudley says, I have a code I have to follow.
Yep.
And then we have all these little intricacies that come up with with these individual stickers. And so if we could work on addressing some of those issues that have come forward. And then another one, maybe with the vehicle roundup part of it, there are quite a few vehicles in town that don't have stickers, and they're parked off street, but they're vehicles that are still in use. And then somebody might jump in that vehicle and go do a quick thing that they're going to do and go back and park it off street. So we're not capturing those, but then, I'm sure I'm not the only person who gets stopped saying, hey, look at that vehicle. Why is that vehicle driving around? They don't even have a sticker on it.
And the ride-alongs are designed to target that, but it's a cat and mouse game when it comes to that, because they're doing a ride-along for an hour or two in a day, and who knows if they're going to run into that same.
And I think that becomes, and we've talked about this internally, I think that becomes an issue. If we know that the vehicle's operating on the city street, that means it needs a permit, or it needs some kind of, and I think that's where the city attorney needs to get, can be, and he is creative, but needs to be creative in how we approach it. Do we approach it from a law enforcement standpoint? If we know a vehicle is operating on a city street, it needs a permit, whether it's parked off street or on street, it needs a permit. So we'll work on that with his office.
And
that's a very good point.
And met with Captain Hawking yesterday, and I was kudos for the drive-alongs and ride-alongs, and hope that continues. And with that new ticket book, I was expressing to him the need to help with the local codes, as well as, of course, the ones he always has to deal with. So, anyway.
Yeah, and we're looking for technology to help us, the e-ticketing, updating our vehicle database and expanding it so then they integrate with each other. So we're in a unique situation where we should know every vehicle on our streets. We should know when its temporary permit expired. And so then we could empower code enforcement to, in the field, be able to quick time check and see what's the status of a vehicle, why doesn't it have a permit, whose is it, and kind of give us a faster reaction time, but we still have to figure out what can we do in different types of situations.
Yeah.
And Mayor, and I know this is I know Denise and I have an interest in this, when people are getting 7 and 8 and 10 tickets, and then they're simply not paid. They're not paid nothing, and what then we have to develop some kind of enforcement mechanism to make sure that those abusers, if you will, that we're able to deal with the people who have 7 and 10 tickets on the same vehicle and never do anything, and nothing ever happens to them. So we have to. Sir?
Public flogging.
Yes, well, yeah.
Don't they go to jail?
Public flogging.
Put a boot on him.
Well, that's the problem. The 7 or 8, 10 tickets is because it's been abandoned, and then we follow the process of trying to send a letter to whoever the registered owner is on record. I sold that vehicle, and that person has left the island. So now, Mr. Jenkins and I are we think we've come up with a temporary solution of where to drag that vehicle once we follow the correct process.
Yeah, and to tag along with Ms. Ratty, I think the point is we're cleaning up the corporation yard too, the maintenance yard. We're getting rid of stuff that's been up there forever, and is either junk, or it's being surplused, or if it's private property, we were telling them to move it out. And so maybe by doing that cleanup, we'll have some space to do some storage of abandoned vehicles before we are able to transport them. We'll have a facility to put the abandoned vehicles up there so that we can get them off the island.
And just real quick, on the residential things, and I don't know if this is one of the things you wait for the traffic engineer or we pull it out of the sky. The whole thing about parking permits. And I don't know if you deal with that, and when you're talking the residential thing, or if we say, boy, that's a big one. We wait, for example,
we could bring back some ideas.
Like what Oli was talking about, having certain.
We've
so if we block out, so if we said you only got 1 hour parking on Catalina, but what do we do with the resident that lives there? Do we give them a permit or those? So that'll be part of that whole residential conversation.
Yeah, the residential, and Mayor, this is actually going to be a current issue. It's going to be coming up. Is this issue of residential parking permits? Some cities do allow that. Some cities don't. And is it applicable here? Should it be applicable? Those are all issues that you'll.
Because I'm kind of glad that Vons isn't started yet, because we can hopefully make the decisions before that gets started instead of scrambling after the fact.
Right, that's a good point.
Really be a mess.
Yes.
So it might be similar to the parking meters, where I can come and bring it to you guys, and we can have discussions about it, and you guys can get all of the knowledge when it comes to it, and then we might wait for the traffic engineer to actually pull the trigger on it. But then at least we're prepared when the traffic engineer gets here with a bunch of options.
Yeah, perfect.
Sound good?
Any other discussion or questions?
The last thing I'll ask from you guys is if there's anything that you guys would like to have talked about when it comes to ideas for solving all the problems that we're going to talk about at the next study session. If you could just shoot a quick email to Denise listing the ideas or anything that you have, that way we can do some research on them.
Great.
Okay.
The next meeting is Thursday, May 11th.
Thursday, May 11th.
It's already.
You guys told me the 5th and the 6th you'd be over town at some meeting, so.
And the 11th was good, yeah.
I think,
I sent that email
how
to
about
everyone.
Wednesday? Thursday's
You're at
Contract Cities.
How important is that?
It's
Yeah, what-
in our face, in the face of all of our friends over there.
Well, I understand that.
Well,
Though we know
what's
you're-
the one
What's
on
the
the 5th,
agenda?
Oli? What was May 5th?
I think that's
That's the
Skag.
thing down in Skag. Can I check the calendar to see how it is for us on Wednesday?
Okay.
Might be good for you, but it might not be good for
Yeah.
staff.
So we
It
don't
might
know
not be
yet.
good for me either.
I'll send an email to everybody asking.
Okay, so I'm not going to put it on here
I
yet.
picked the 11th. So, I mean, there was a reason I said the 11th was good, but I'm not sure about the 10th.
I'll send an email to poll everybody.
Cool.
All righty, if there's no
Good job.
further,
Right
thank
on
you.
time.
No further conversations.
Thanks
Thank you,
again,
guys.
Denise. Thank
Have
you
a
for
nice lunch,
that
Tony.
meeting. We'll get together. on that.
Thank you.
I'll let you know.
Meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Oli, are you going to?
Yeah, that'd be best for me.